Hello.
I am Lauren.
And I am Ken.
And this is Paradise After Dark.
Dark.
Paradise After Dark is an independent podcast covering true crime,
unsolved mysteries,
missing people,
and some urban legends.
Please check out our website, paradiseafterdark.com. On the website, you'll find links to all of our episodes, even the archived episodes, our mailing list, merch store, links to our social medias, and of course, our Patreon.
We also have a little virtual tip jar there, so if you want to swing on by there and give us a little tip, we'd be happy to give you a shout on the show. You know what? As a matter of fact, legend has it that we just received a recent tip.
We did.
We did receive a recent tip. Yep. Amy, thank you very much.
Amy is like tried and true.
She's a true fan. I love Amy. She's awesome.
And I also got to give a shout out to another patron of ours, Space Coasties, who I was able to actually get together with last week, and we had the most amazing barbecue. I can't remember the name of the place, but
yeah, you said something about Clydesdales or something like that. They chopped up barbecued horse meat or something.
No, it wasn't. It
was something like that. Clive, what was it?
I'm sure that she'll correct us in the comments.
Just so you know, I'm sitting here with my arms crossed and a pouty face. So that's it. I got a pouty face because I didn't get no barbecue. So.
Well, that's not my fault. That's your own fault.
No, that's awesome. She loved it. Had a great time.
It was great to meet one of our patrons face to face because, a lot of them are all over the country and we don't get to see, ever meet. And it was really awesome to be able to actually meet. And Space Coasties have been a fan for a long time, since almost day one, I think.
Yeah, they're part of the OG crew.
Yeah.
So.
All right, let's jump into this episode.
So this episode is going to kind of take us sort of way north. It's kind of on the north part of New Jersey.
Yes.
And this county is in the higher parts of New Jersey.
It's going to take us way back into time.
Going to go back in time.
1988, if I'm being specific.
I like 1988. How old was I in 1988? Oh, yeah, I was 13. Was it? Yeah, 13.
Oh, my gosh. Really?
Mm-hmm. I was 13 years old.
I was 5.
Damn it. She gets me with that every time because you don't realize it until you get to that point. But so this little place in New Jersey, for 1988, it was kind of a high-end place. I mean, it was very affluent town. I mean, the average median income in this particular area in New Jersey was like $50,000, which is huge for 1988. I think my dad was a cop in 1988. I think he made like $21,000 a year, something stupid. It wasn't a whole lot of money.
Yeah.
The population in this town hasn't really grown much either. Is only 16,000 people in 1988. So this is kind of a small, very wealthy community, very good schools. Everything got a high rating. So you want to kind of bring us in, Lauren, and tell us about this little place in New Jersey?
So we're talking about the murder of Betty Ann Sullivan. Thomas Sullivan Sr. awoke in his Jefferson Township, New Jersey home around 10:30 p.m. on January 9th, 1988, to the sound of his home fire alarm blaring. He jumped out of bed, and as he was running downstairs, he heard the front door slam shut. But before he could even register this, he saw the fire burning in his living room. When he saw the smoldering fire on the couch, he ran to the door in an effort to spot whoever lit the fire. He saw his own car rolling down the driveway and coming to a halt across the street, but he could see no one in the driver's seat. Mr. Sullivan summoned a neighbor for help. After the two put out the fire, Sullivan realized his wife, Betty Ann, and elder son, Tommy, were missing. His younger son, 10-year-old Brian, was home but was able to escape the house. They called the police for help.
Well, sadly, Betty Ann was found by her husband in the family's basement. She had been hit over the head with a dumbbell. She was stabbed over 24 times, and her eyes were cut out of her head. Thomas Sr.'s car was backed up onto a snowbank in the yard across the street, undrivable. In the living room, where the fire was started, several occult books were laid out on the floor in the shape of a pentagram. Now, Thomas Jr., also known as Tommy, was missing. Was he taken? Had he gotten out of the house when the fire was started and ran? Or was he responsible for all of this? Several neighbors reported seeing Tommy Sullivan running from the scene after he crashed his father's car into the snowbank. I mean, what the hell happened in that house? That is the question neighbors and police were asking as they began to process this gruesome scene.
The following morning, after things had calmed down a bit, the neighbor across the street looked out into his backyard at about 9:15 a.m. There was something strange out there by his woodshed, but he couldn't tell what it was. He went outside to get a better look. It was Tommy, and he was dead. There was about a 10-foot circle of blood stain in the snow surrounding him. His wrists were slashed to the bone and his throat cut so deeply he was nearly decapitated, with his head just resting between his shoulder blades. What a horrific scene. I mean, if you can just imagine walking up on something like that, it had to be traumatizing. And the neighbor, who never wanted to be identified by name, obviously called the police immediately.
Well, Tommy was described as a good all-American kid. I mean, he attended Reverend George Brown Memorial School. It was a nice Catholic school, and he was on the wrestling team. He was a Boy Scout who played baseball at the local Little League, and he delivered newspapers. So just your average 14-year-old kid. I mean, he brought home good grades until the 6 or so weeks before the horrible events of January 9th in 1988. You know, he had never given his parents much trouble at all. But lately, Tommy had developed a fascination with Satanism and the occult. This was something his mother was absolutely not going to stand for. This is a very religious community, right? And he attended a Catholic school. Having thoughts and beliefs and to practice anything to do with Satanism was a no-no.
In November of 1987, Tommy Sullivan's Catholic school teacher assigned students to research other religions. The studious 14-year-old did his paper on Hinduism, but police say he became more and more interested in the subject that earned his friend an A on the project. That subject was Satanism. Within weeks, Tommy had transformed into a different kid. He was defiant, hostile, and buried in library books on the occult and listening to heavy metal rock music.
Oh, that'll do it.
Even his teachers had noticed a change in him and warned his mother just 2 weeks before the murder. Tommy was caught passing a classmate a note that had to be reversed and held up to light to be read, said Chief George Stammer. The note's message seemed to be in Latin and had to do with the occult.
I remember there was a Chicago album you could play backwards.
I don't know anything about any of that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's theorized that Tommy and his mother had gotten into an argument in the basement that night about his new hobby, and Tommy flew into a rage, murdering his mother. Authorities believe the fire was set by the boy to cover up the murder of his mother and to kill his father and younger brother. Detectives found a suicide note that was written by the teenager before the dispute with his mother, indicating the youth had planned the murder-suicide before the argument. So he'd already planned this murder-suicide. It just so happened that it went down the way it went down.
Well, most 14-year-old kids don't ever realize there's smoke detectors on the ceilings because they don't ever look up.
The piece of correspondence that we have in our possession indicates that his interest in Satanism was part of his motivation in killing his mother, and in the subsequent events, Morris County prosecutor Lee Trimble told the Herald Press. The note contained Satan-like symbols and cult references, but Trimble refused to give more details.
Well, we need to take some time here to explain for those of our listeners who have never listened to a podcast in their life and may not be very familiar with the so-called Satanic Panic that gripped our country in the late 80s and early 90s. This was real. I specifically remember these kinds of things. I mean, even at the fair, you had these things. They had signs. I mean, there was protest. It was a very odd situation.
I remember it too.
I mean, it was very prevalent in the communities. I mean, of course, I'm being from Indiana. It was, you go to the local fair and it happened there, especially when you get into that Bible Belt area or you're in a really high religious Catholic, or Christian areas. So the Satanic Panic was much like the panic that ensued in Salem, Massachusetts during the Salem witch trials. I mean, our country grasped this crazy idea and ran with it. Like, oh my God, we can spot a witch. They're doing certain things that witches do. Let's throw them in the water. And if they escape, we'll kill them because they're witches. And if they die, then that means they weren't a witch and their name is okay, but they're dead. It's just a real weird thing that our society seems to kind of circle back to every now and then. So this so-called modern day satanic panic at the time caused vigilante parents to dig under preschools searching for secret tunnels. I mean, the police swapped tips on identifying pagan symbols because obviously we have to figure out how we can identify this. a company that sells toothpaste and soap had to deny repeatedly that it was acting as an agent of Satan. In the 1980s, allegations of ritual abuse at a preschool in Southern California led to the longest, most expensive trial in U.S. history. The McMartin preschool case, which resulted in 0 convictions. I forget how long it lasted, like 6 years?
Yeah, it was a
like
long
6
time.
years, but it was like $1.5 billion or something stupid for the time.
Yeah.
Now, it became emblematic of a much more widespread phenomenon known as the Satanic Panic.
Even before the McMartin trials, a book written by Canadian psychiatrist Lawrence Pasder and his patient, who was also his future wife, Michelle Smith, called Michelle Remembers, set off the actual panic. The book used the discredited practice of recovered memory therapy to help sweeping lurid claims about satanic ritual abuse involving Smith. The allegations, which afterwards arose throughout much of the United States, involved reports of physical and sexual abuse of people in the context of occult or satanic rituals. Although its lurid claims were quickly challenged, the book was a bestseller. Suddenly, it seemed terror could be lurking in any neighborhood.
Anywhere, and of course, everyone was scared to death.
The phenomenon was so sprawling that in its aftermath it took on several names, like the ritual abuse scare or the daycare panic. But one name has increasingly stuck, and that's the Satanic Panic. The evidence wasn't there, but the allegations of satanic ritual abuse never really went away. Ken Lanning, a former FBI agent who worked on hundreds of abuse cases with the Bureau's Behavioral Science Unit, told the New York Times, "When people get emotionally involved in an issue, common sense and reason go out the window. People believe what they want to believe." Some social workers and police officers, searching for an authority to help them face the problem of abuse, even adopted it as a training text. FBI agents, police officers, lawyers, and social workers gathered what they could and shared their findings at conferences and seminars. They handed out satanic calendars, traded pamphlets about symbols like the Cross of Nero and the Horned Hand, and copious lists of supposed occult organizations, which included a collective of feminist astrologers in Minnesota. In May of 1985, the news program 2020 ran a segment on Satan worship that described animal mutilations, clearly used in some kind of bizarre ritual, rock music associated with devil worship, satanic graffiti, and backward messages in pop songs.
Yeah, that same year, Procter & Gamble was accused of being run by Satanists because of their logo. People were claiming that the bearded man in the moon facing 13 stars was actually a symbol of the devil. But the logo dated to 1882, and the stars referred to the 13 original colonies.
3 years later, NBC commissioned its own special, hosted by Geraldo Rivera,
Don't like that guy.
who described gruesome crimes, aired child testimony of abuse, and interviewed Ozzy Osbourne. Almost 20 million homes tuned in for this special.
Well, Geraldo, for some reason, in the 80s, early 90s, he got into he dug up all the weird shit that happened. I mean, if you look back at the case that we just covered about the Club Teens, he was involved in that. I mean, there was so many things.
Club Kids?
Sorry, Club Kids, yes.
Yeah.
But it seemed like he was really involved in a lot of that stuff.
So in 1993, the long saga of the West Memphis Three began, in which a trio of young men were accused of murdering a trio of young boys as part of a cult ritual. Now, we all know that story.
I don't. I've never heard of it.
The West Memphis Three?
I'm well aware. I was being a smart ass.
Oh.
So speaking of Ken being a smart ass, let's take a quick break. Welcome back, Lauren.
Welcome back, Ken.
So, as we mentioned earlier, Tommy's interest in Satanism and the occult started when a classmate got an A on his assignment on the topic. Now, he began checking out books on the subject at the library and studying up. Now, his father, Thomas Sr., said that Tommy had told a friend that he had a vision that Satan had appeared to him and told him to kill his family and preach Satanism. Now, at the Reverend George A. Brown Memorial School, they made counselors available to all the students. But in doing this, they were also trying to find out if there was any interest in Satanism widespread in the school and or the community. Now, satanic panic ensued in the area, The town folks, of course, had several concerns. Was Tommy possessed by a demon? Was Tommy possessed by the devil himself? Did Tommy participate in satanic rituals in the woods out off Clifton Road?
Yeah, let's talk about Clifton Road.
I've heard of Clifton Road.
So Clifton Road is just a road in West Milford, Passaic County, New Jersey. West Milford is just north of Jefferson Township, where Tommy and his family lived. But there's enough hoopla about it that the road has its own Wikipedia page. The road and the land around it have gained notoriety over the years as an area rife with many legends and paranormal occurrences, such as sightings of ghosts, strange creatures, and gatherings of witches, Satanists, and the KKK. It is also rumored that professional killers dispose of bodies in the surrounding woods, with one recorded case of this actually occurring. In the words of a local police chief, it's a long, desolate stretch and makes the imagination go nuts. Rumor has it that around the time Tommy Sullivan killed his mother, there were groups of people, maybe they were Satanists, gathering in the woods off Clinton Road. Rumors that rituals were being performed, rumors of human sacrifices, and the like. But keep in mind, this was right during the middle of the Satanic Panic era, and there's no actual evidence that Tommy ever even went down Clinton Road, let alone attended any satanic rituals.
But nonetheless, Morris County authorities still believe that the murder-suicide was prompted by Tommy's involvement in Satanism, his love for heavy metal music, and his interest in the occult. And on January 14, 1988, the authorities closed this case. The final outcome, Betty Ann Sullivan was murdered by her son, Thomas Sullivan Jr., because he was obsessed with Satan. Well, this obviously caused the community panic. More than 500 people packed a church all on January 14th to ask questions about Satanism in North Jersey. It isn't necessary to be afraid of Satanism, said Reverend Richard Rentos of Fort Brennan's Roman Catholic Church in Clifton, New Jersey. What you must not be afraid of is confronting him. There would be more of these community meetings in and around northern New Jersey. Parents all over feared what happened to Tommy Sullivan can happen to their child. Doesn't it seem silly now to think that not that long ago, thousands of people believed that others could be taken over by Satan that easily in such a short period of time? Father Rento advised parents to watch for evidence of interest in Satanism in their children, such as the use of symbols, the collecting of any types of satanic books, sudden withdrawals from the family. He advised them to keep an eye on their friends, their school habits, and to be aware of long, unexplained absences from home and any interest in heavy metal music. Because if you're listening to Kiss, it could be a problem.
Funny. You know what else shows symptoms like that?
What?
Psychosis.
Yeah.
According to the National Alliance for Mental Illness, NAMI, some of the early signs of a psychotic break are hearing, seeing, tasting, or believing things that others don't, persistent, unusual thoughts or beliefs that can't be set aside regardless of what others believe, strong and inappropriate emotions or no emotions at all, withdrawal from family or friends, sudden decline in self-care, and trouble thinking clearly or concentrating. Many factors can lead to psychosis, including genetics, trauma, substance use, physical illness, injury, or mental health conditions. According to the Daily Record, an article dated February 14, 1988, titled Murder-Suicides Roots Run Deeper Than Occult, interviews with more than 25 people in an attempt by the Daily Record to piece together Tommy's last days suggests something much more complex was happening. The adolescent, initially portrayed as the all-American boy, was in fact a troubled, angry young man whose sudden interest in Satanism was only a symptom of something larger going on in his life, something no one really knows. The truth of Tom Sullivan's death, Sister Philomena Fleck, his school principal, said, died with Tom. I think before anyone jumped into the Satanism stuff as an explanation, they should have looked at other possibilities, said Jerome Travers, a child psychologist and former Catholic priest who now studies religious delusions. It's not a book that he read that caused him to do something like this. It was what was going on inside him that caused it. Travers, who never met Tommy but had been following the case, said he may have experienced the first stages of schizophrenia, a mental disorder that sometimes includes religious delusions and can appear during adolescence. There also may have been a severe family conflict that triggered his rage. It appears Tommy died confused, angry, and in turmoil, rebelling against his parents, his school, and society's conventions.
You know, I think that's what happens is the satanic panic, I think, in a lot of aspects really was portrayed in the communities as an excuse. That's the only it could be. We couldn't have it. Mental health back then was not as prevalent as it is today.
Right.
So they couldn't believe that these things could be happening to people mentally unless they were put there by some other force, whether it be an album, a book, or something. So
let that sink in while we take a quick break. Welcome back, Ken.
Welcome back again, Lauren. These ad breaks, seem to take forever sometimes, but necessary evil.
Gotta pay the bills.
So now that we're back, let's take a closer look at Tommy's life and see what he may have been dealing with around the time of this tragedy. Now, according to his principal, Tommy was an average student. He was involved in wrestling with the school, faithfully attending practices and matches. He worked out with weights in the basement of his home, and like many other wrestlers, he would sometimes sleep in his sweats, run for miles, and even force himself to vomit before matches to make weight. Now, this is according to a school friend named Michael who explained this to the Daily Record.
Now, can I just interject something super quick? Just from when I was researching this, I actually put out a post on social media to my friends. And I know a lot of my friends have sons or husbands that used to wrestle or sons that currently wrestle. And apparently the stress and strain that these boys and sometimes girls put on their body to make weight, like sleeping in sweats, running with garbage bags on them, forcing themselves to vomit. It's an extremely stressful and strenuous thing that they do. So, I mean, don't just take that with a grain of salt. I mean, really, this kid would run for miles and force himself to vomit. That's not just something you do for a sport. That's extreme.
Yeah, well, that's the kind of thing that happened also like in football or basketball. It's amazing when you talk to athletes that are no longer in the program. So people that were in high school sports when they got out, to see and hear about some of the things that they actually were forced to do or put through. Right. Or put themselves through, rather, in some cases. So some guys were just concerned they're going to lose their position if they didn't do this or that. So it adds stress, definitely, to a teenager teenagers mentally already stressed
He's
anyway.
only 14 years old.
Exactly. They're already stressed. And Tommy once told a friend that he hoped to go to college on a wrestling scholarship. You know, Tommy's parents were heavily involved in his life. Thomas Sr. worked with Tommy on practicing his wrestling. And his mother once told the neighbors she would never take a job outside the house because she wanted to spend time with her sons. Now, Tommy's days were, they were organized. They were very structured. He had a paper out in the morning. He went to school. He had study time and then wrestling practice almost every evening.
But according to his friends, Tommy had a whole different life that his family didn't know about.
Most teens do.
He began experimenting with alcohol in the 5th grade. His buddies reported he would guzzle liquor to impress his peers. He cheated on tests and bragged about it. He frequently snuck out of his house late at night to drink and hang out with his friends. Tommy was also at odds with his parents about his schooling. He did not want to continue to attend Catholic school. He wanted to go to public school, but his parents would not budge on the subject.
Well, in the months before the killing, Tommy seemed to become more rebellious, his friends reported. They said his youthful pranks turned into some more serious mischief. They also said that Tommy's interest in Satanism wasn't nearly as prevalent as the news reports claimed. If anything, he only talked about it to scare and shock his friends, not because he really worshipped the devil. So he's just trying to put a little fear in them to be odd, that weird kid.
Yeah.
And early in December of 1987, Tommy stole a bike from another boy. This is kind of different than Tommy's normal behavior. He also bragged to his classmates that he burglarized a neighbor's home on December 14th and stole some jewelry, a camera, and liquor. Now, he tried to pawn the items, telling his friends that he was trying to make enough money to run away from home. And the week before Christmas, Tommy was suspended from school for smoking in the bathroom.
So it was on January 5th of 1988 when Tommy's behavior change became noticeable to his close friends. That day, he was at a neighbor's house and they were watching a comedy movie, but Tommy never laughed. His friends said that wasn't like him. The following day, school was back in session and Tommy told his friend Chuck about a dream in which the devil told him to kill his family. Tommy had indicated to his friends that he was not getting along with his parents. He made statements about running away before, but never outwardly planned on hurting anyone. 3 days before the murder, Tommy skipped gym class with his friend Chuck to read an occult book, where they were caught and held after school for punishment.
So it wasn't like Tommy was alone in this. He had some friends that were kind of involved in the same thing.
Right.
Basically the same curiosities, I should say.
The following day, Tommy passed a note to his friend Chuck, described by police as a coded satanic message inviting others to join him in a pact. Now, I believe this is the same note that we mentioned earlier in the episode. When asked about it, Tommy told the principal it was just something he had copied out of a book. The principal called Betty Ann, Tommy's mother, to tell her about the note. Betty Ann was very concerned, but Thomas Sr. just told his son to drop it. He also told Tommy that he wouldn't be wrestling at his match that coming Sunday because of his problems at school. His mother went through all of Tommy's rock albums looking for ones with supposed satanic messages. Now, Tommy was a fan of heavy metal music long before he became interested in the occult. He even had posters of Kiss, Motley Crue, and Poison on the walls of his bedroom.
So did I. Well, the day of the murder, Saturday, January 9th, 1988, Tommy delivered his newspapers in the morning. He did his route on foot because there was heavy snow on the ground, which made it really hard for him to ride his bike. If you've ever rode a bike in snow, it's virtually impossible sometimes. Now, he spoke to his neighbor, Ed Coleman, about his wrestling match the following day and said he was looking forward to it, although his father had already told him he couldn't go. Remember, he got grounded from the match.
Right.
Now, Tommy went to the Mass at St. Thomas the Apostle Church with his mother and his brother that evening. His father stayed home because he was sick, and Thomas Sr. fell asleep before his family returned from Mass and didn't wake until the fire alarm went off at 10:30 p.m. At approximately 10 p.m., Tommy's younger brother Brian woke up to use the bathroom and actually found Tommy washing blood off his hands. And Tommy told him he had cut his hand and that their mother was taking him to the hospital, so just go back to bed. What exactly was said or what happened between Tommy and his mother right before the murder is and will always be a mystery.
So looking back on it, Tommy's classmates believe their friend changed so much in his last days that the boy who killed his mother was no longer the boy they knew. He wasn't a thief, and he wasn't the kind of person to do that to his mother. John, a classmate, told the Daily Record. The real Tom is the one who killed himself.
So was Tommy a Satan worshiper who sacrificed his mom and killed himself in the name of the devil?
Or was he just a troubled kid who probably just snapped, had a psychotic break, and did something horrible?
He could have been both.
Could have been both. Now, I kind of want to look at the psychosis because to me, my own theory, not that I'm anybody special, I'm not a doctor or anything, but
in your unprofessional opinion, that's
in
what I
my
was
unprofessional opinion, Tommy having visions, the alcohol abuse really kind of points me toward mental illness and psychosis versus being possessed by the devil.
Well, I think, like I said, it's kind of an excuse. I think a lot of times people look to place blame on something. And I think what happened is because there was a sort of an interest, that was just an excuse for them. But I think you might be onto something.
Yeah, I just don't believe. I think that satanic panic played a big role in this story, in how this all went down as far as the newspaper reports and the reporting on it, because the whole country was trending, if you will, back then. And Tommy did read some books and say some things. They just took that and ran with it.
Yeah, and it's just like today. I mean, like you said, the word trending. Back then, that was never a word. Oh, it's trendy right now. I mean, it just was not something that was used often. But like today, if, there's a particular TikTok that's trending or a post on Facebook that you constantly see all the time because it's trending. Back then, think about it. I mean, it was newspapers. These things took a while. So as long as it took them to sort of get settled into all the communities in that area, it had to sort of waller out all around the country to where it hit national news and the TV media picked up on it. And next thing you know, everybody was getting so scared, like, oh my God, because a lot of stuff, and even Geraldo Rivera and some of his stuff, Geraldo Rivera, did I say it right or is it Rivero?
It's Rivera.
Yeah, I said it right. All I can say is there wasn't anything in the vault, dummy. I remember sitting there watching for hours the Geraldo Rivera, him trying to get into Al Capone's vault, and there was nothing. And that was pretty much in with him, and I was happy because I got tired of listening to him and looking at him. But, he could only because he was so big at that time. But he would always say, this could be in your neighborhood. Is this in your neighborhood? Are you seeing signs of this, of this, of this? It was like a commercial for medicine nowadays. Do you have this, and this? Well, you need to take this. Well, of course they're going to hit something that sounds like something you have. But he would always say, this could be in your neighborhood. Have you seen signs of, is your kid wandering off too far? Is your kid seem different? Well, they're teenagers. Teenagers make changes. So a lot of times, and every parent that's been out there that had a child that was 10, and then all of a sudden 2 years later, it's a 2-year gap, but they hit 12, it's a different child. And then 14 is like, whoa.
Yeah.
And now here we are with an 18-year-old, and we're like, whoa, what happened?
Yeah.
But that's what happens. And I think a lot of times they need an excuse for that because they can't believe that the child is changing, but they're absorbing more information, especially even more so nowadays. Probably not so much in Tommy's case, but even then there were avenues of music, things. His tastes were changing. So they thought that he was changing, but it was just Tommy growing up and becoming his own individual person. And maybe he didn't like what he had, so he was just wanting to change it. But doesn't excuse anything that he's done here. It does not excuse, what he did to his mother. And can we talk about something else here? I want to kind of talk about the way he was found. I have questions. You get into the satanic panic part. Now I'm going to play into that because we talked about that. And I kind of want to play on that a little bit in the aspect of how he was found. There was one set of footprints, right, that was found to where he was found in the snow, correct?
Right.
His wrists were cut so deeply it was down to the bone. And his head or his neck or his throat was cut so bad he was almost decapitated to where they said his head was resting between his shoulder blades. How the hell does that happen? How can you cut your wrist so bad but still have the power and strength in your wrist after they're cut to cut through your throat?
I have no idea.
That's the only thing. But there was only one set of footprints. So if you want to take a deep dive into the satanic part of this, or the ritualistic portion of this, how's there one set of footprints in someone's body found that seemed to be so badly cut that almost seems they couldn't do it themselves?
The only thing I could think of is adrenaline. He just had an adrenaline rush and was just able to fight through the pain in his wrists long enough to cut his throat.
That's a good point, Lauren. That really is a good point because I never thought about the adrenaline, but it does do things like that.
I mean, call me a skeptic if you want. I just don't believe that Tommy was possessed by the devil. I honestly think it all comes down to some kind of mental illness and stress and some kind of psychotic break that Tommy had that evening.
Yeah, I had a conversation with this young kid that works part-time with us sometimes. And we had a discussion where we were talking about mental illness. Mental illness is becoming prevalent nowadays. I mean, it's being, there's modes for it, methods of it, and things there's tools out there for people to use, and there's a lot of help available. But you get back into the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, even going back to the 50s to some aspect, when you had the insane asylums. The mental health was there. The problem was any little sign of difference, they thought, we got to put them in a special place.
Yeah.
It wasn't like there was nothing for them to help these people to be normal parts of society. So you're right. This could have been a real huge mental issue that Tommy had, but he had no outlet. He had nothing, and maybe the occult aspect of it was sort of like his bipolar side of it. Maybe it was a secondary personality that was taken over.
Could be.
But I don't know. I can't.
In our unprofessional opinion.
Well, yeah, because I'm definitely the most unprofessional person when it comes to mental health. I promise you that. I mean, I can look at it. I can give you my opinion, but that is exactly what it is. But keep in mind that his mother was just bludgeoned to death in the basement. And I never thought about the adrenaline aspect. So he's pumped up. He gets in the car. He's trying to flee. It crashes.
Stuck on a snowbank.
He runs from the car, hauls ass, and tries to hide. He gets there and realizes, I can't get away. I'm going to get caught. What do I do? And then he's just so pumped up that he cuts his wrist, and that's not happening fast enough, so he just cuts his throat. That's the only the adrenaline part makes sense to me, Lauren. But the other case that we've covered that really shakes me up as bad as this one was probably the Alex Crane case.
The Alex Crane case was the most disturbing case that we have ever covered.
I would agree. We had access to so much stuff, and there was some personal connections. And
it was very similar. It was a 14-year-old boy, but instead he shot and killed both of his parents.
Was that episode 14? I don't remember.
I'm not sure. It's in the archived episodes on our website, actually. It's not available widely. If you do want to listen to it, go to paradiseafterdark.com, and it's in the archived section of our episodes.
It's not our most fantastic audio, but it was one of the most disturbing cases for us personally that we covered, for sure. And if you listen, it'll probably be the most disturbing for you. So
yeah.
Lauren, was there anything else you wanted to get into about this case other than it was a huge tragedy, and it's very sad. I did read somewhere or heard somewhere that the older brother later on died.
The older brother actually did commit suicide when he was 21 years old.
Okay, I thought he died, but I did not know he committed suicide.
He did.
Sad.
Yeah.
Very sad situation. Maybe he had some mental illness bouts.
Obviously, there was maybe something in the family.
Yeah. So I guess that's going to be it for tonight, Lauren.
So if anyone would like to support our show, please consider subscribing to our Patreon at patreon.com/Palmahawk Media. That's PALMAHAWK Media.
And we don't refer to them as patrons. We call them family. Be sure while you're looking for that Patreon thing, you can also check out our website for links to all of our social media, our merch store, and much, much more.
And please make sure to subscribe to the show on whatever platform you're listening, and rate and review. This really helps us branch out and reach a wider audience.
And as always, thank you very much for listening
to Paradise After Dark.
Dark, 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 dark.